Oh, cool. How you doing? Walk you through it.
Serious. Turn to their seats, please. There we go.
For the record, I was the first in my seat.
All right. I was very explicit that we were to return by 8:55. It's 8:58. And we're just going to get going here. Right. If anybody sees any council members out there in the hallway, send them in. All right. Because this is important. Now, the long-awaited discussion on the implementation of a road utility fee. All right. So, who is going to introduce this item? Is it going to be you, Shane?
I certainly can. I'll be brief.
Okay, let's
we've
do
had
it.
public hearings and notices go out and Q&A, and I think if you look in your packet on page 24, you have before you what I think you were calling a starting point, staff recommendation. I think today what we're looking for is feedback. Obviously, this isn't an action item. We won't be implementing this fee tonight, but we are looking for feedback on the proposal as presented. Something maybe we can tweak and bring back to another work item, and then maybe an action item after that. But obviously up to you, and we're looking for your feedback.
All right. I think before, this is more free-flowing, but I want to I really hope Councilmember Adams comes in, because I think this is something that he would be interested in. I want to see if we have consensus around road fee versus property tax. So I just want to get a feel if people are headed that direction. So if you don't mind, Councilmember, I'm just going to go through and say, how are you feeling about a road fee? Go ahead, Councilmember Hanson.
Just so and again, opinions, and I want to apologize for not being there earlier tonight. But one thing, can I just set one record straight too?
Absolutely.
In one of the comments we got an email, and I don't think it's correct because I looked it up, but when you're thinking about the property tax route, it was a CPA, and they said, oh, it doesn't matter anymore. I don't believe that's accurate. It's still, you get a deduction if you itemize for property taxes. It's just the amount has reduced, and I went and looked that up. So that's not a fair statement to say it's just your benefit isn't as high anymore. So that's when you're thinking about that, because I know some people said we'd rather have it go that route because we get the benefit of a itemized deduction if we do itemize. That is still there. That wasn't taken out in the law. It was just reduced significantly. That really affects people. The reduction affects people with second homes and larger properties. So just some thoughts on that. But I don't mind, again, the fee. As I think about it, I hate the commercial aspect. I hate the public use aspect of it. I'd rather it just be individuals, but that's just my thought. I can be, and then I'd like there to be a sunset on it, almost an evaluation for a set period of time to say, let's do it for this period. And then show results, show what we're doing, match the dollars to the roads, and I think that'd be helpful for a lot of people. Keep us accountable. Again, those are my feelings.
Okay. Councilmember Page, what are your feelings? I think we've heard from you a little bit, but do you want to, your feelings on fee versus property tax?
Well, no, I think if you evaluate this, when this first came out, for example, I don't think there was anybody on the council that liked the commercial aspect of this. It seemed way high, and I think we realized from day one that this would be a disincentive for a lot of businesses here in Kaysville. I mean, with that being said, I am of the camp that I'm not in favor of, like, for example, the way the federal government operates, where 50% of the people in the United States don't even pay any tax at all. It's their country, too. I really believe that people need to have skin in the game no matter what. I think there's a certain amount of that's the right thing, in my opinion. I'm in favor of the fee. I think that, owning commercial properties, I think if we had a tax increase, it'd be disproportionate. I mean, it would be actually a bigger fee for the businesses than it would be for the residential people if we went that route. So, I guess the debate is what's fair and how we move forward on that. But I'm in favor of it.
Okay, and then Councilmember Garn, your feelings, road fee versus property tax or some other way.
Yeah, I would be in favor of the road utility fund for a variety of reasons. I believe it's more transparent. It has inherent controls compared to property tax. which can be used for any purpose that the City Council decides. So there's an inherent control here with the road utility fund that there's no incentive for any future council unless they change the structure to make the rate be anything other than what's necessary for maintaining roads. I do favor putting a provision, I don't see that in the proposal here, to make the transparency, however, and also the truth in taxation rules of changing property tax rates to put that on this fee. So that if any time the fee, the future council decides to change the fee, it has to go through a public hearing process just like a property tax increase would. I also think that the use aspect of this has been the historical model for the majority of road maintenance and funding in Utah and around the nation for many years. Some states, of course, have toll roads. Utah has not gone that direction. Those don't work on local roads. But it's a use model. It's not paid, and as a matter of fact, it's hard to find a more conservative organization in Utah than the Utah Taxpayers Association, which is opposed to they were opposed to Prop 1 using sales tax for roads. They're also opposed to using property tax for roads, and they favor a use model because it's tied to the actual use of the roads. So there's a variety of reasons why I believe that this is a far superior way to go, and it's adaptable. The one other thing I would say is it's adaptable to change in the future as the state right now. I think it's SB 156, they're looking at vehicle miles traveled and ways to capture that data and to do a use model. And so the city can adapt in the future. Certainly we want to be held accountable. I think there's inherent advantages to being held accountable the way it is. The reason I would not favor a sunset provision is because roads don't sunset. Road maintenance does not sunset. We do not sunset garbage collection fees or charges for water. And so I would be opposed to a sunset fee.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Barber, your feelings on fee versus property tax?
Okay, I'll try to keep my comments just to that point because I have lots of
Yeah.
When I first started looking at this, I was, like many residents have spoken, I preferred the property tax for several reasons. What I wanted to see, mostly because of the truth in taxation that we hear a lot about, the ability for us to monitor where it goes and be aware when it raises. So I thought a fee, and I don't really like fees. No, let's face it, no one likes fees, no one likes taxes. To me, it seemed a lot better. But the more I've looked at it and the more I have shifted in thinking about why we are assessing this, is we are assessing it because roads are a consumable commodity. Basing it on use and a fee has made more sense to me. It's made more sense in a lot of different ways. I know I've spent a lot of time thinking about the differences that we've laid out for residents, property tax versus fee, especially the percentage of property tax that Kaysville City gets is much lower than most people realize that comes in, and the way that it can be bucketed. And by that I mean, with a fee, we say, this is for roads alone, and property tax comes to our general fund. Those are actually, really, when you look at it, from what I've discerned, it's pretty much the same. Money is money. It feels like it assesses a lot differently. And the transparency, and I said this in the question and answer, I feel like we can actually be more transparent and be held more accountable with the fee. And I would echo both sentiments. I understand the sentiment about the sunsetting. I absolutely do, because with the fee we have an ability to adjust. But I've also tried to be really transparent to any resident that's asked to not make a commitment that this is a one-time Band-Aid fix and that it'll go away later. That would be really nice, but the reality is we're going to continue to use our roads. We're going to continue to need to maintain them. I would be in favor of, instead of referring to it as a sunset to give the impression that it'll go away, a reassessment, whether it's yearly, but something that says, are we on track? Do we have more than we need because we're doing such a good job maintaining? So I'm in support of the fee versus tax.
Okay, great. Councilmember Adams, fee versus tax?
I don't support either at this time. I will say that churches and businesses, you're going to see prices go up at the cash registers. You're going to see offerings need to increase at religious facilities. So in essence, it does seem like the people are just going to pay for it twice. Fruit Heights has a hybrid of this, but they have a lot less commercial, a lot less church buildings than we do. So we're putting quite a bit more burden and impact on commercial and on religious facilities. I mean, no matter what we do, I mean, if it's a tax or a fee, whatever you guys decide to do, I think there ought to be an annual review with a report, an absolute coming back to the people with where every dollar was spent, even if that includes showing, which the invoices are already public record, anybody can grab them, but if that includes showing right down to that level, it ought to be shown exactly where it was spent. There ought to be a goal set every year. Here's what we're going to accomplish. And we ought to be coming back to people and saying, here's exactly where the money went. The concern that I have, though, with the tax or the fee either way is I believe that there is cash on hand in the city right now that has been accruing. And I'll stick the comments to road versus fee if we're going to comment more later. So I don't know if the belt is tight enough, and I'm concerned that we're just grabbing more money to take pressure off of existing money and kind of put it in the what I call the I want it bucket. So that we do what we want with the money that's already loose, and then we take and we grab more money to free up pressure on that money. So I've got concerns with the whole thing at this point. We'll get into that in a minute.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, thank you. So what I thought we would do is just get a general feeling. So the consensus on council is that we go to a road utility fee. There is dissenting opinion, which has been expressed. Now, given that we do have consensus that we go towards a road utility fee, I think our comments are going to be talking about what can we do to make this the best road utility fee that we can. And then after we talk about that, I want to talk about some of the concerns that Councilmember Adams brought up in regards to, excuse me, how do we augment this? Because even if we do augment, go through with the road utility fee, it gives us $1 million, which is good. It will bring in $1 million. So. And so we want to look at additional ways to some of the comments that you've mentioned. I want to look at those as well. All right. So, can
I make a comment?
Yes.
When we say, we have to be very careful, because when we say I'm in support or excited about a road fee, I think I'd speak for all of us. It's not like we're really excited to put this out there. We're not wanting to put this out. Right. We're looking at the constraints that we have, and we're saying there's many tools out there that we could leverage. This is one of the many that we're going to. Mm-hmm. Not that we would really go out and.
Right.
Can I clarify what you're saying about $1 million? Because LTAP talked about $2 million.
So, I think we'll get to that.
We've reduced. Hey,
sure.
You got a comment?
Okay, I'll clarify. So as we made adjustments to the commercial aspect, it drastically reduced the amount of money that we're going to bring in. So based on the report that we got, we will be getting an additional $1 million on top of the money that we get for C Road money and our active transportation money. So it almost doubles the money that we're getting, but it still doesn't get us up to the $3 million, which we want to be able to put towards roads to really make a difference. So that's what we're at. So what I'm proposing is that I would like to go through and talk about the different, I want to talk about business, public use, and residential, and get your feedback on those aspects of if we can. So I would like to start with Councilmember Page, your ideas on what do you feel about whether or not we should include businesses in the road fee?
Well, I think I've already made that statement, that I think it's important that everybody becomes a player in this. The business owners that I've talked with in the last couple of weeks, I think that the new program, which I think a lot of them are not aware of, I think that we need to get that word out and talk to them, and I found that most of them are in support of that. I think there is some businesses, though, that they don't know where they fall within the parameters, and I think that's something that has to be discussed and figure out where they're gonna fall into that. I think there's always room for conversation with our businesses to find out exactly where they're at and get their opinions on this as well. So I think that's important that they participate in this as well, because I'm of the opinion that, if we go the other route, it's going to be more expensive for them than what we've proposed. This is a better deal for them, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Councilmember Garn.
And I apologize,
Yeah.
Mayor. We're about halfway done with the 30 minutes, just as a...
Yes, I asked you to do that for me. And it could be that we're going to have to, and I anticipate that we're going to have to move this to, put this on work agenda for March 1st as well. So, Councilmember Garn, thoughts on business?
Thank you. Yes, I support, again, in addition to what Councilmember Page said, including everyone, and everyone feels a piece of ownership. But there's also something to be said for broadening the base. And I totally get the argument that's been made to me many times as a CPA, that when you tax a business, you pass that cost on. Or if you have, I guess what I would say to that, though, is we do pick up a little bit of, not very much at this point because we had to get the business fee reasonable, but you do pick up a little bit of those who are coming into the community who are not residents who are also using the road. And it's important for that reason, too, because the more this is based on use, the more it will match the model of the future, because this is the way the state, this is the way the entire nation will go eventually as we get better data on actual usage of the roads to replace the fuels tax, which is outmoded and archaic and doesn't work anymore. And so we are ready then to do it. At some point, maybe you can actually do it by vehicle, but right now the generators of traffic approach and estimating how much traffic is generated is important. And the more you get away from that and say, we're going to exempt this group or that group, or we're going to have a different fee here and there, you're getting away from the use concept.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Barber, your thoughts?
On businesses? When I first looked at this, when it was proposed at the previous council, my immediate thought, I think maybe matched Councilmember Hansen's, is that I was so hesitant to involve businesses at all. I would prefer to not. I resonate with every sentiment that's been said about that they will pass it back on, that we need to be friendly as a city to businesses. My parents were small business owners. I get how hard it is. Sometimes people feel like businesses have unlimited sources of revenue, and we all know that's very, very not true, especially in a city like ours. So I was very uncomfortable with the initial proposal for so many reasons, but specifically on the businesses and what a hefty portion they were bearing. I am interested in this proposal. I have a lot of questions on the breakdown and how we actually assess it, but I'm really in favor of lowering that total revenue that's placed on the burden of businesses themselves. So I am, and I'm also, as I said previously, I've come around to the idea of the utility fee based on usage, and that does get shared by all people, all aspects of the city. So.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Adams, I know you don't support the road utility fee, but if you could set that aside, your ideas on whether or not, if we're going to have a road utility fee about businesses.
Sure. And I want to be clear that I support roadway reconstruction. I absolutely do. One of the reasons I'm here. But the city, to me, we can compare it a little bit to an HOA. You know, an HOA, the people who live inside that HOA are responsible for the infrastructure and the needs of that HOA. Not people who come and visit grandma and grandpa for Christmas in the HOA, not people who may come and sneak into their pool. They're not responsible for the needs of that HOA. So I don't know how we can expect non-residents as a viable, productive means at the cash registers of all of our businesses to be really a shift of the burden from our residents to other city residents. I don't think that our businesses are patroned enough by non-Kaysville folks as it is. So if we discourage non-Kaysville residents from coming to our cash registers even furthermore, then we actually cause our businesses to suffer even more once again. So I think it's a trickle-down effect, and I don't know. As I said, I think we need to encourage other people to shop here. And raising the price of milk or raising the price of a hammer, raising the price of whatever your service is that going to cause someone to come over here to buy stuff? Or is that going to cause our residents to go to very closely neighboring grocery stores and whatever the outlet may be that they're shopping for? So if we were Farmington and had everyone in the world coming to our stores, it might be different. But sadly, we're not.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councilmember Hanson, your ideas on businesses?
We already get a portion of their sales tax. That's why I'm just hesitant in this. I do, again, amongst the two plans, like this one far better than the first. I'll say that, but I just hesitate again. They already pay it. And then I always think to myself, being held accountable, what do I give them for their sales tax dollars that they already give to us? I know that portion is small, but what am I returning to them? Just to make sure we're using those effectively. So that's...
Okay. So you're still kind of on the fence as to whether or not we include them?
I am.
Okay. So that's... Okay.
But this plan is far better. Mm-hmm. The first one was scary. This one,
and I think I should say, I've said it so often, but I haven't said it in this meeting. So the new proposal that we're talking about, that's in our packet for businesses, we're calling it the 369 plan, and we have small, medium, and large size businesses. Small is a business that has 0 to 10 trips generated per day. 11 to 25 would be medium, and 26 and above would be classified as large. So in this scenario, something like a warehouse is going to be counted as small, because do 10 people come to that warehouse per day? Probably not. Whereas Fizz, they're considered large, even though physically they are small. So in the example, so we have small, medium, and large, and small businesses are assessed $3 per 1,000 square feet per month. Medium is $6 per 1,000 square feet per month. And large businesses are assessed $9 per 1,000 square feet per month. So that is what is being proposed, and that is what we're discussing. Yes. Did you have I
have a question on that.
Yes.
Is that okay? It's about the figures.
Yes, go ahead.
So I want to discuss how we came to this. I understand the breakdowns, the small, medium, and large, but what surprised me that I'm not familiar with is how we actually came to that 3, 6, and 9 number. Mm-hmm. And how we assess that. Was it based, did we go on total revenue that we need and break it down?
No. Actually, with the 369 plan, there was a lot of discomfort from all of the council members. I don't know one council member who said, yeah, that's a really good idea. And because of that, one of our staff members worked with the consultant and said, we need to bring this down. We can't do this to our businesses. And so in conjunction with the consultant, they thought, okay, what is livable? And specifically, I think we had in mind our large businesses and what was going to be something that would still get us some money but did not kill our businesses. So that was the intent. And so they reverse engineered what doesn't kill our businesses based on average daily trips and came up with the numbers. Did you have something to add?
I did, just from a structural, it goes to one of my concerns, it's a process concern, and that is, how do we tie it back to the use? So if we were saying, we don't want to kill businesses, and I too thought that, wow, that's way higher, and how can a business afford what those initial, wasn't ours, but the consultant came back with. So I totally get that, and I think it's the right thing to do. But how do we tie it, this lower business fee, how do we tie it to actual use? And, the thought, just to give an example, if you look at a Main Street business, if they were in the small category, and I'm not going to pick a certain business, but if they were in the small category and they were 1,000 square feet, which some of those Main Street businesses are, their fee would be $3, right, per month, or $36 a year. Well, the thought occurred to me, if you were translating that into use, that would be about maybe the number of deliveries and the person actually driving to the office. If you looked at a supermarket, even though they're in the large category, $9 per 1,000 square feet, and maybe they have 30,000 square feet. I don't know how much Smith's has. I'm just totally guessing. Pardon?
This is 120.
Oh, 100. Whoa, okay, 120. But, so maybe that covers all the trucks coming and going, and the employees coming and going. Maybe it doesn't cover all of the traffic generated by the store of customers going there. It might cover a portion of that. But still, you could tie it to some measure of use and say, well, we're only going to measure, because actually that could be, depending on your theory of how you want to allocate that could be a well-grounded theory. And that's my big concern, that somehow when we tie all this together, we're not just saying, oh, yeah, we like you guys, so let's reduce the fee. No, it's at some point got to be tied to average daily trips or vehicle miles traveled to be a use fee.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. All right. Councilmember Adams, go ahead.
I just want to make a point for record is all. That, there may come a time in the future when this council member, does have to take a harder look at a fee for business, churches, and residents. It's just not now. And the reason why I say that, is because I believe there's money here. These are your budgets. So at this time, there may come a time in the future, but I think we've got.
I'd love to sit down with you, Councilmember Adams, and talk about where you think we could save any kind of money in the general fund.
It's all up for public hearing now. I've asked you guys for a year now, and I brought this up in the work session too, and it fell on deaf ears. So we'll just do it publicly. Thank you, though.
All right, thank you. So I hope, we have, based on what we had on the agenda, we had allocated 30 minutes. How are council members feeling about continuing on beyond 30 minutes? Are you okay with that? Because we have until 10. That's our.
I agree. Need a motion to extend?
No, not at this point. I think we just had put 30 minutes on our agenda. Is it okay if we continue to talk about this? Any concerns about that? Since we're here? Okay. All right, wonderful. So we are, I think we have some consensus, but not as strong a consensus about businesses at this point. And I think we're not settled on that, but I just want to, in this meeting, flesh out kind of where we're at and where we need to dive deeper, okay? Let's talk about public use. There's a lot of strong feelings about that. So I'm going to start with Councilmember Garn on this.
Okay, so on this, and I've actually had discussions with some representatives of churches here in the community, and I understand they're concerned. There are, I don't want to say that, but what I want to say about this is, and I could be right or wrong. You could argue this, but my argument for this is, first of all, they do generate traffic. When you go to a church, they turn on the electricity. The church pays the bill to the city for that electricity that's used by the people who are there. If you drink water at your church, you pay the city for that water that's delivered to the church. So I acknowledge, first of all, that it's a little different with roads. that people do drive to the church on roads and they do wear them out. The roads are not inside the church like the electricity and that, but they do abut the parking lot for the church, and that travel to the church does generate wear and tear on the roads. So whether you agree with me or not, that's my justification in theory for why it's a consumable. A road is a consumable, just like water. It gets used up. And so I do believe that even nonprofit entities should pay something for the use of the roads.
Okay, very well. All right, Councilmember Barber, what do you think?
I think what makes me initially question is when we look at it and we have public use, if we're trying to really assess based on usage, it's difficult to determine when we look at this that we have churches and schools grouped together, and I think the only thing that ties them together is their tax exempt, their public use status, where their usage is actually very different, and that's what makes me uncomfortable. I feel like we should better assess what their use is, if that's what we're doing to businesses, and even the residential came from assessed use, we should do the same thing for our public use as well.
Can I just say something really quickly about
Yes.
that? Super quick.
Go ahead.
Because I actually agree, and I sort of explored that too, that, it seems like schools might be a little different than churches in terms of the amount of traffic they generate. But here's the other problem. You can't just pick a number.
Yeah.
Like, I think so you've got to have data, and that is admittedly that if there's one weakness to the road utility fee, I still support it, but it's the reliability of the estimate. And that will be refined later. But yeah, there's a difference there. But how do we have something that's well-grounded? Is it just what I say? Is it what Shane says? What is the difference between a church and school? And so we're basing it a little bit on estimates, and I think that's the problem. If you had a good grounding for it, I would absolutely say, yeah, let's have as much granularity as we can have. But if you don't have the data, it's kind of like, okay, now you're just making up numbers.
But couldn't we go through the same process that the businesses was broken down by? Like they looked at a dry cleaners versus an auto dealership and said, okay, this is how they use it. Could we do that on churches?
Right, and so that is the basis. I should mention that there actually is a basis based on national statistics, which are not very granular, but at least there's something that you can hang your hat on and say, we are basing it on national statistics. This is how much a residence generates. This is how much a business of this class generates. This is how much a nonprofit or a church generates. And that's the data we have. So if we break away from that data, from the study, from any grounding to it, now we're just making it up without a study, and that is not as well grounded.
So you're saying that this public use number that we have here is based on usage. We're trusting what that study gave us.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. And I should interject at this point that what we are looking at now for public use, so those are schools and churches, and we are looking at charging $4.50 per 1,000 square feet per month. That is the current proposal. All right? Okay. Councilmember Adams, your thoughts?
I think the difference between schools and churches is you're looking at one that typically operates 1 day a week, and the school is operating 5 days a week. So you're talking about a huge difference in volume of traffic being driven. And one, you're forced to go there. Well, actually both, it depends. School, though, you're semi-forced to go there. Religious purposes, hopefully you're going by choice. So there's big differences. As far as a national study goes, to be sensitive to a national study, but to keep it real, I don't care. I don't care what Georgia says. I don't care what a statistic in New York says. I don't care what a statistic in Florida says. It doesn't matter to me overall. That doesn't weigh in entirely on my decision, because if you want to get granular on the religious category, the dominant religion of Kaysville operates at full capacity 1 day a week. The dominating religions in America operate almost every day of the week. So it doesn't compare to a national study, in my opinion. It's irrelative. I think it comes down to, do we want to tax or fee, however you want to disguise it, Do we want to do that to religious and school? And in the school sector, I disagree too, because they're just going to raise taxes again, and the people are going to pay again. So, again, I really wish we were spending more time on, and we had our CFO here, and we were getting nitty-gritty to the granulars of the existing budget and where money is being appropriated right now and where it could perhaps be redirected, saved, cut, and put towards roads. So...
let's see. Very quickly, briefly, very briefly.
Very briefly, I just want to say that, granted the point, but when you lower it to a certain level, a minimum, basically what I think, and I'm making an assessment here, my own assessment, but you've lowered it to a point where you probably hit the church level, and relatively speaking, you're undercharged. And same with business, you've lowered it to a very minimum level where there's not a lot of risk of not capturing actual usage.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right. Councilmember Hanson, your ideas on public use.
Just, I don't like it. Again, go back to double taxation.
Okay.
The people who use the roads are going to be hit once with their individual fee. So I'd rather raise the individual fee and take care of that rather than pay to go to church. And I go to church in Farmington. I'm kidding. Just joking.
All right. So you're a hard no.
I'm a hard no on this one.
Okay, got it. All right, Councilmember Page.
Well, this is one of those tough ones. It really is.
Yeah.
All of them. Schools create a service for it. Churches create a service. I mean, I was very concerned in the beginning with a lot of the small churches that are they're struggling very much on very limited funds, and you can't have something that's going to put them out of business or tax the people, because in a lot of ways it's they're dependent on their money from in fact all the ways they're dependent on their money from the people that actually attend the churches. And going back to Jake's point of view, well, there's some truth to that. Churches, they use our police, they use our fire departments, they pay zero when it comes to those things because they don't pay property taxes. I think we have to be very reasonable, and I think that's something we look at if that's too high or if we need to lower it a little bit. It's one of those things it's really, I think it's easier to figure out what kind of how much traffic goes there versus what's a fair number. But I go back to how I believe that I think everyone needs to participate because there's value in having quality roads and having a plan, and I think that's good for everybody.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Can I just make one more for the record?
Sure.
Because I want it clear. I believe I have identified a current revenue source that exceeds $1 million annually. That is a perpetual, not just a one-time. And also, even furthermore, if we did a bonus 2 years, I believe there's a lot more money that could go into the first 2 years as a big kickstart too. But I believe this revenue already exists. Now, in the event or the day thereof that it does not, and it can be proven to me that it does not exist, then yeah, I might change my tune on where this money needs to come from, but not today.
Okay. Fair enough. Oh. Time's up. Now,
whose time is that? Wow.
I think it was back to Councilmember Hanson. I forgot to turn it off. Okay. Now I want to go to and talk about residents and your feelings on the resident fee. Keep in mind, in our packet, it still has it broken out as single family and multifamily. So I would like to hear if you feel that we should have it broken out as single family, multifamily, or if you would like it to be a flat rate. All right. So I think I'm starting with Councilmember Barber.
Okay. Echoing the similar sentiment that I had on the businesses, if we're tying it to use, actual use, I haven't seen, and I've looked, the estimates that a multi-unit generates less use than a single family, and I can't figure any other use for it. So if I can be shown that somehow, that would be one thing. Other than that, I haven't been able to determine that myself. And I've also gone back and I've analyzed this analysis that we had based on, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was about 10 trips per day generated by families. And even just in the past city council meeting that we had previously, we talked about trips generated, and that number was a lot higher than this 10 trips per day on the traffic studies that were independently done by residents in that neighborhood, and as well as some things that we've done by the city. So I would like to compare this national number that we were given versus an estimate, if we could, about Kaysville and what we actually fill here. And so that's where I would coming from.
Okay, so you feel a flat rate, or rather, because a lot of people have issue with the flat rate.
Yeah, I would actually be one of them as well, as I've echoed. But the flat rate is difficult for me to swallow because if we're tying it to use, there's obviously there's a huge spectrum of use across our city, across every city. We don't need to get into that. Mm-hmm. But if that's what we're assessing, we're roping all family or all dwellings into one. Okay. Then I would be okay, unless I can be proven with the data why a multi-unit would generate less use than a single family.
All right, very good. Councilmember Adams.
And as a follow-up, I want to make sure we're assessing that 10 trips per day is semi-base accurate for Kaysville. Okay. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Councilmember Adams, your thoughts.
In the analogy of the HOA I made earlier, I mean, at the end of the day, I think residents, due to the fact that we have chosen over time, whoever it was that did or did not make those choices, we've somewhat migrated towards and gravitated towards being a bedroom community overall, per capita. So in that kind of environment, it's like the HOA analogy, those who bear the burden of that environment that they wanted are those who made the choice to have that environment. And I think that's more of a burden that, keep in mind at this point, I think I've made it clear I'm not in support of this. But as far as where burdens should fall, absolutely. As a resident, I'll bear my burden of the road fee. That's fine with me. And as far as how to assess, like we heard comments earlier about fixed income situations and those types of things, how to assess that, maybe a 369 plan on the resident side too. Now that's going to get laborious and strenuous. Maybe we figure out, and keep in mind again, I don't want to be misquoted at all. Keep in mind, this is in the event or the day that someone proves to me that my income sources that I see are either not there or when they dry up. So, but if that day came, maybe we look at how the government operates with benefits. We say, okay, if you're a Medicaid, Medicare scenario and Social Security income, all right, you're a 3. If you're this scenario, you're a 6. If you're this scenario, you're a 9. With the 740 being the cap, and it breaks down to various levels from there. I don't know. Those are just thoughts to toss out to you guys' program. So,
okay. All right.
Your program.
All right.
No. Roads.
Councilmember Hanson, your ideas.
Pace me down. I'm fine to pay more per individual because I'm the one that says I don't want the other groups. So I'm okay to do $10 a month per. And I'm with Councilmember Barber as far to show me that multi-unit should be treated any differently. I'm not against a flat either, just across the board. On the last thought is though and that's probably the biggest. As we've gotten emails that have come in and comments, is just there are people on fixed incomes. How do we address those? I don't know if they want to be called this, but the elderly. What are you being on a fixed income? Well, I'm elderly.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you.
Look it, man. I'm just old, don't you?
Me and my grandchildren. Okay, never mind. But that's again, I don't mind more for the individual but I think that's the facts we're facing. If we need this, I've said I don't want to do the other things. So if we're going to make the income, raise it. I like $10 a month, $120 a year. It's easy to teach in accounting. So
okay.
But there is again with that specific group that is on fixed income. If you could have your choice to consider their needs.
Okay, Councilmember Page, your ideas on this.
That's what CPAs do. They round it up, don't they?
Yeah.
Hey,
Here's $10.
I think we need to be careful here. I mean, we're basing our decision on trips and everything, and I think if we have a progressive attitude on exactly, well, let's deal with fairness and let's go forward. And I mean, that's a hard thing to determine. I think, and Jake's talked about this at the state level, the day is coming that we're going to have the information that we'll know exactly how much travel people will have. And I think when that day comes, it'd behoove probably the city to make that decision and probably base it on actual miles traveled. And I think that'd be a much fairer way of administering it. But I think on the other hand, we work with what we have, and we need to understand that I think we have to be very careful not to go away from the data, but to make it how we feel it should be, and then we're picking winners and losers, and I think we need to be very careful on that. I think at this point the best way is to have a flat fee for everyone, because I don't think there's any other way, and I agree with Mr. Hanson on this, that I know for myself, I've tried everything in the world to see if we could have different tiers on this thing, to see if we can make it where it's not as much for some people and more for other people. But I'm at an impasse on how to approach that after talking with legal and other people, and I'm not sure if that can be done and still be within the parameters what we're trying to accomplish and within the nature of a fee without it being challenged down the road. So that's my opinion.
Okay.
Add one comment.
Yes.
Just a thought on that. It just reminds me of if there is legal problems. The other utilities I see, help for those that need income help, but it just comes from donations of other citizens who want to give to that fund. And if they can prove need, there might be a way to help out. You're right. If we have to charge a straight fee, but make something like that where, as a community, we could help out that group.
That's the appeals body idea, I think, that we talked about.
Provo City has
Good-
a great
good
model
point.
where businesses can also contribute to alleviate either other businesses or residents.
That's a good idea.
It's interesting to look into.
Maybe we'll have to borrow that.
Can I make a point, Chairwoman?
Yes, please.
Just a quick thought. When I was young, my dad set us up a savings account. And in order to encourage us to put our money in that, he would match it dollar for dollar. I don't know. I don't remember how long that lasted, right? But I wish it still was ongoing. But why don't we, I love some of the things going on in our nation right now in various departments where if you want to add one more layer of policy, you've got to throw away 20 policies. Why don't we put our best foot forward, guys? Why don't we say, look, for every dollar that we're going to collect out of you, we're going to find the equivalent dollar in the budget, and we're going to trim it from something. Or we're not going to redirect it to a want or a wish. We're going to keep it all it needs. We could do a match program. I'd love for you to offer me a minute to share with these folks what it is I'm talking about in the budget.
And we will have time to do that, but it's not going to be tonight. Hope that's okay.
I don't think it's fair to the residents. I represent them. I put a year into looking into this.
Councilmember Garn.
So, to Councilmember Barber's point about the black box, what's in the black box? And if there's no data, if the black box, by that I mean, what's the calculation behind that? Is there a difference between, because the original question, if we could gravitate back to the original question the mayor asked.
Oh, you mean what's the data driving that number that we saw?
Right, so you raised the question, the original question, I believe, that the mayor asked was, should there be a difference between multifamily homes at $5 and something and $7.85 for a single-family residence? So to answer the question, what's in the black box? Is there data supporting that? I don't know, I know there's national data there particularly.
Yeah.
The other thing I actually agree with is if there's better data, why not use it? Like if we have actual Kaysville data, but it has to be, it can't be just someone's opinion. I completely agree with Council Member Page, though, however, that as soon as we start choosing, and I'll tell you why, it's not just my philosophical preference, but as soon as we there's other implications here. As soon as we start choosing the amount, like, I think this is fair, or we'll have an exemption, or whatever, then you actually run the risk of being challenged in either court or by the legislature, saying it's not a use fee and therefore it's not allowed. So I think we have to be careful of just picking the number we like. The other thing I would suggest is, because I don't want to seem totally heartless here either, you know, some people, and maybe some of these ideas of donation could work and still work within the use fee. However, should we be doing that for other things that we estimate that have a flat rate? For example, sewer has a flat rate, or but some people probably pump more water through the sewer than other people. So should we start, or garbage? Do some people put heavier garbage in the garbage can? We pay $11.50 for one garbage can per month. So the road fee is less than that. Should we start thinking about exemptions for people living on a fixed income from the garbage fee? You know, so should we make it uniform? And I think that's some of the questions I have, you know, and I get the fact, though, that even $3 a month to some people might be a lot of money. So I do understand that. I don't know. And the other thing is, even if we have better data, let's use it. But to have 50 cents, okay, George, you drive, we've been able to discover through the appeals process, you drive, 5 miles less than Sally over here per month. So therefore, we're going to have your fee be 50 cents less. I mean, the cost of administration right now with the data we have and the capability we have, you might as well not even do the road fee for what it would cost to have everybody in the city have a different fee. So those are my concerns. I think for residents, wherever you set it, it's got to be, number one, based on use. Number two, it's got to be the same pretty much for everybody, unless there's the distinction between multifamily and single residence.
Very good. All right. I think that's as much as we're going to do tonight on this, because we want to do a public hearing. Yes?
I have one final just request.
Yes.
Okay.
I've got one too.
Okay. Quick.
Just back to the 369 and the 450, I just want to, and I guess even the residential, just where did these numbers come from? Are we sure that that is the right revenue total? I'm looking at the proposed total down there. And what does that actually get us? How close does that get us? What does that mean in roads? So obviously it decreases. We can all see, yay, a reduction, but actually what are we giving up at that point?
Okay. Good. All right. Councilmember Adams.
Well, $3, $4, $6, $7, $8 a month, that does mean a great deal to some folks. It should mean, every dollar should mean something to everyone. But the city, having already raised taxes 98% just 2 or 3 years ago, people haven't forgotten that. That was obviously a huge jump, unprecedented, probably in the West. And power rates were supposed to drop around that time too, and never have. And now they're reportedly, as we're getting feedback from staff, that they potentially the rates need to go up again. And that fund has generated $7 million in reserves now, and it was supposed to hit a reserve point, and the rates were supposed to come down. I hear the germane comment. But honestly, guys, we ought to have some sort of open dialogue when we're up here, when we're talking about such a big matter. You guys have steered a lot of this. Let's get our hands off the steering wheel when it comes to being open about some things. I mean, the general fund, since the taxes went up, now has $3.5 million in it, and it in unassigned funds. And it was at $1.7 million the year of the tax increase. So on average, we're going up $600,000 a year, not going up. We're trending up an increase in, if you want to call it retained earnings, call it retained earnings. You want to call it surplus. But we're trending up about $600,000 a year in surplus money. I think that's a revenue source.
Okay,
and we've already been told we can use it.
All right.
There's other areas too.
Thank you. And
I'm surprised you don't want to hear it.
I do want to hear it, but not right now at 5 minutes to 10, because what I do want to do
Fair
is
enough,
move
but in
into
the work
our
session,
public
we didn't want
comment
to hear it
period.
either.
First, we will hear from Randy Gambosi.
I don't want to be the one to cut Dave off, but I guess I will step up. just a few thoughts on the roads that I wanted to comment on. The first, dealing with the neighborhood churches and schools. I have been opposed to it, but I actually heard a thought this week that changed my whole thinking on it, but it was that these are intended to be neighborhood churches and schools, and if that's the case, people should be walking to them. And I think if you look around, you'll see that here in Kaysville that doesn't happen. Very seldom. And if people are that concerned about it, they can vote with their feet, literally. They can get out and they can walk, and it will be less wear on our roads. And we will have that excess in our budget so that that fee maybe could be lessened or go away. And I think that is something that the citizens need to take very seriously and look at, that we are the ones driving on the roads to the schools and churches. And it might be hard to swallow that pill, but they are neighborhood churches and schools. Additionally, I just lost my notes. Give me a second. One question I do have, I know there was a Qualtrics survey that went out asking the citizens' opinions on that. I don't see the results of that anywhere, and maybe the feeling is that that was just for your input, but I personally would love to see that published under all of the information about the road fees, just so that I personally can know if the general public agrees with me that we need to have some sort of a sunset, if you want to call it that or not. I know that was a question on the survey, and I think that the information that was yielded should be available, even if it's not definitive. I would love to see it. Lastly, on that idea of a sunset, I know that calling it a sunset is, as Councilmember Garn has put out there, it's hard to say that it's a sunset because there is this idea that roads don't go away. But at the same time, on the same hand, it has been said that the state is looking at this. There's even federal eyes looking at this. And there could be a solution that comes. And I think the concern that citizens are facing is that, yes, it goes into a specific bucket, but that bucket can always be used. And we don't want to have the Taj Mahal of roads. We just want to have roads that don't wear out in 10 years. And so if it's we get a lot of money and then we just put more money into roads that doesn't need to go there, that's a concern. So I would love, even if it's not called a sunset, I would love to see it come as a public hearing every 4 years. And if it's a concern about passing it on to another council, well, do it every 3.5 years so that you have some same council people. But I think that at the end of that public hearing, it should be mandatory that it is reapproved and not just reassessed. But there is an affirmative vote that we are moving forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Zane Larson.
Apologies if my mind's at this time of night it's not as sharp as yours. So I'm not as I don't approach things with like Dave Saunders does with all the math and trying to break things down so detailed. I'm more like James' group where it's just get rid of the complexities. It's like it's starting to sound like our tax law up here, which, well, we are talking about taxes, but I'm talking federal tax law, and I just say, stop with the complexities, just flatten it out. I do have to agree with Jake about the garbage can. I don't fill it up every week. I'm a single person in a home. I put it out every week, though, because I'm paying for it. But I don't think that's here or there. Anyway, so I approach things with my own reasoning. And if we currently have our roads, some need repair, but most of them are residential, even if they are supposedly zero remaining surface life. I approach things with rational. So why would we need a 267% increase in budget all of a sudden, like now, as some emergency? Did like, that to me sounds like, did some building burn down all of a sudden we have to go pay for it? It's just because if we need to increase our road spending budget from 1.2 million to 3.2 million, that's a 267%. That's the number I'm throwing out there. That's a 267% increase, which just seems huge knee-jerk reaction. And I think the people talking with the sunset was what I really think should be done is there's a lot of discussion that of finding reliable sources. Can we trust LTAP and what? It's like, well, if you don't have good numbers, can't make a decision. So And I'm still disagreeing that we even need it, but try something smaller first, because 267% at the beginning just seems huge. I'm not accusing anyone of this, but it just seems like what I see in normal politicians is like, I pick a big number, throw spaghetti against the wall, and see what I get away with. Okay, I can trim some way, but then I got everything I want. And as far as who, if you're applying fees to churches building, and it's still the people that's paying for it, like James was saying. Are we going to then apply the fee to the city hall, to the fire station, the police department? No, we're not. Just make it simple. It's the people who live here. People pay for it. We drive in other cities too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you to everyone who participated. And
Mr. Mayor, my name was on the list.
I'm sorry, no, your name isn't.
I called in earlier and I added my name. I said I want to be on item 4B, 4C, and 5A of the agenda. And so when I talked to Leanne on the phone, she was supposed to put that on.
There's no 5A.
5A, work items, discussion, implementation.
Yeah.
That's what we're on right now.
30 minutes. So that's not.
That's called to the public. You're looking for number 6 on our agenda,
So
but
under 5A, and it was, we never actually had 5A then.
we don't actually have a discussion as part of that, but
I was told that by saying that would be part of this and that I would be able to get.
please come up. This is the last time, right? We did this last time. Come on up. Last time.
So maybe if
3
we
minutes.
just made it
I don't know
clear.
if you did it to him last time.
Yes, it was him
Well,
last
it was
time.
me last time because I didn't know that we even had the rule last time.
And
this time, I followed the rule. I called up Maria Devereaux.
Oh,
was
do you know
not
what?
in.
Actually, I'm going to. We have
This will only be
expired.
for 60 seconds.
We have expired our time. We are now at 10 o'clock.
I think it would behoove us all if you were.
I would take a motion to extend the meeting until the
I'll
after.
motion that we extend the meeting and offer a graceful comment to you. I think it would behoove us all if you found a bit of a spirit
I'll
to the law.
second the motion.
Thank you.
All in favor to extend the meeting?
For this comment.
Yes, for this comment.
Aye.
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 All right.
Okay, thank
3
you.
minutes.
So the issue that I have here is that we're discussing a fee where we don't have good data to support why we even have it. We have an LTAP report, and as I have mentioned to most of you in the past, there are inconsistencies in that report, specifically between Appendix A and Table 2. There are also many different interpretations that can be drawn from the conclusions and recommendations that are created, all of which give very differing results. I would like to see, in an effort to make this go much more smoothly for myself and other residents, an actual list produced by the city of Kaysville, not by LTAP, but by the city of Kaysville that says, these are the roads that we need, this is what we think it will cost, and when we think it'll be done. Now we actually have a real plan that we can talk about and say, is the amount of money that we're trying to raise equivalent to the need that we see? Then I can get behind it. But we currently don't have that. So I don't even know. I see this as we have a solution looking for a problem. I would like to see the problem stated. There's also in the description, there was no mention of the duration, reevaluation, sunset, whatever you want to call it. I'm grateful that you guys talked about it. I would like to see it written down because even though I have talked with most of you personally about this thing, I do know that words spoken in private have no bearing in reality. It is only the weight of the written word that matters. So I would like to see for the next meeting this written in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. All right. For future future reference, we do not call in. People don't get to call in and put
I think we need to,
Yeah.
there's a
You
lot
have
of,
to sign in.
I
Yeah.
think we should do like a,
Talk to Leanne.
Yeah. Not your problem. Not your fault.
we do need to
We
communicate
don't take call-ins.
better what's happening.
This was hard to try to get this thing to fit on that.
Yeah.
I get really complicated.
She is out of town. Right. Right.
You just said that I was listening last because we were able to get the notes. He says we
I
probably
don't
can't.
even know
just
who
get extended.
Leanne is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It won't
But-
be down on the
Okay,
timetable.
but we don't have a 5A.